What's up, you guys? Welcome to another track record video. As you can see, I know in the last video I cleaned my garage, but it is now dirty again, thanks to a giant fridge right there that's gonna be going in our back room. So, at least I can say I tried. I am so excited about today because I hope it's gonna be a learning experience for everyone. Hopefully you guys can learn a thing or two about what I'm gonna talk about. And as you can tell by the title of the video, I'm getting a new mod. And that's really what I'm excited about today, is that the fact that I'm going to order a new mod or a new upgrade for the WRX, and it's gonna be cool. It is, in fact, brakes. So basically what I'm gonna be doing today is going through and just talking about what brakes exactly I'm getting, why I'm getting those, and no, I'm not getting big brakes. I know when people are thinking about brake upgrades, automatically it's like, well, go big brakes. And that was obviously something that I wanted to do eventually, but considering they're like $2,000 to $3,000 for a full big brake kit, I'm gonna hold off on that, but the main reason why I'm not getting big brakes is because my wheels don't actually fit big brakes. And you'd think that when I was picking out wheels, I would have taken into consideration whether big brakes fit onto the wheel, or whether the wheel accepted the size of big brakes. And unfortunately, I don't know why I didn't think about that, but it's not something I thought about apparently, and my wheels the inside diameter is not big enough for big brakes to fit in there with the caliper on the diameter of the rotor. So that's just where I'm at right now. But I was doing some research, and it's like I discovered that, yeah, brakes are important because they stop your car, but man, like there's a lot that goes into this that I think everybody who decides to mod their car and upgrade their car's performance really needs to take into consideration. And at the back half of this video, after I show you what brakes I'm getting, I'm gonna be talking about the things that you guys should be taking into consideration when you are thinking about getting new brakes, or why you should get new brakes. Right now, I'm just gonna show you guys a few, you know what? I'm gonna switch it up right now. You guys, and I appreciate the last video that I put out of me cleaning the garage, and I honestly so much appreciate everybody who commented and it was like, hey, we would rather see, you know, something more car related, or we like this type of video, and that's why I was asking you guys to comment and say, what do you guys want to see? Is this what you want to see? Is this not what you want to see? Because it really honestly helps us. We're trying to get out more videos per week. That is honestly one of our biggest goals right now, as well as keeping the content fresh and new and interesting for you guys. So really hope you guys are sticking with us, and I know you guys are, and you're supporting our brand and Never Finished. By the way, Never Finished stickers. I have one. I have the small version on my laptop right now, so I'm repping that everywhere I go with the laptop. And then I have the 6-inch version on my car. So the 6-inch version is available on our website, neverfinish.com, if you want to pick that up. Let's get some cinematic shots, and then we will get into the brakes that I'm getting. Okay, so I am back. I always love including those, you know, little shots here and there. So hope you enjoyed that little tiny baby edit. So as you can see here, I just have a list of 4 things that I'm going to be getting. It is, as you can see, the StopTech slotted sport rotors, front and rear, and also Hawk HPS front brake pads as well as rear brake pads. I'll explain this in more depth and the reasoning behind this when I get to the second half of the video, on why I chose slotted and why I chose a street only pad. And I'll just give you a hint right now, it's because I'm going to be getting 2 sets of pads, one for street driving and dailying, and then one for track driving and autocrossing, because they both have positive and negative effects on your rotors and on your car. So, but again, like I said, I will be getting into all of that when we get into the next part of the video, which is going to be in a few seconds. Okay, before I start this, let me just clarify what you're seeing right now is not having, I don't have anything to drill into these walls, and so I was forced to use duct tape. So don't hate on the duct tape. I'm making with what I got. So it's a little ghetto right now, but it'll do the job. So just try and look past this beautiful hanging job. I had to put a lot on there because it fell off the wall the first time, but you know, production value, it's increasing little by little. So anyways, let's get into this. Okay, all right, so what I'm gonna get into is some of the problems with brakes, the solution. We're gonna talk about big brakes a little bit and different types of brake rotors, and then different types of pads and their applications. So to start off with, one of the problems with brakes is something called brake fade. Now, in order to understand brake fade, you need to understand some of the reactions that happen when you apply the brakes. Obviously, there's a lot of friction and heat. Those are actually things that are very important to brakes working successfully and working well. You need friction, obviously, that's being caused by the pad coming in contact with the rotor, and that is going to cause heat. Now, when heat gets involved, it allows the rotor to grip onto the pad better, which will slow the rotor down faster, which is a good thing. So you do want heat when you have that friction, but obviously when you're taking the car to a track or you're driving it really hard, there's going to be a lot of braking, or you're coming down a hill for that matter. There's going to be a lot more braking, which is going to cause a lot more heat. Now, there are instances where you have too much heat, and that can be a problem. That is one of the things that leads to brake fade. What brake fade is when you have too much heat being applied to the rotors. The rotors actually are supposed to take the vast majority of the heat that is being caused or generated by that friction happening when the pad is coming in contact with the spinning rotor. So the rotor is meant to take the blunt force of that heat being applied. But when those rotors get to the point where they are taking so much heat that they reach their heat capacity, they're not able to absorb any more heat. And it's kind of interesting because when that happens, that heat still is being generated and it has to have a place to go. So it automatically gets transferred to the pads then, and the pads are the thing that you don't want the heat going to. You want them heated up to a certain temperature so that they can work well, but you don't want them going beyond that range that they're rated for, because once they get to a certain point of heat, something called outgassing happens. Now, when outgassing happens is basically what these brake pads are made of. They're made of different compounds, but all of those compounds in different brake pads are held together with a certain type of resin or glue, or something to hold all of those little particles together. Now, that resin is what you do not want to get too hot, because when that gets too hot, it starts to vaporize, and it gets so hot that this gas starts pouring out of your brake pad. And what happens is when you try to, say this is the brake pad, this red portion here, and then this is the surface of the brake rotor. This green gas, it's just, green, it's not actually green, but just to illustrate, this gas starts pouring out of the brake pad and trying to escape because it is evaporating. There's a lot of pressure happening in there, and that will actually cause a thin layer of gas in between the surface of the pad and the rotor. So then the rotor will not be able to close completely, or it'll cause some sort of sponginess or squishiness. So it's that thin layer of gas that's actually preventing that solid, flat contact that you want. This gas has to have somewhere to go. And so that is usually found in older cars, but in more modern cars, the compounds and the resins that are used are a little bit more advanced, and more modern cars have a lot less outgassing, but it's still an issue. Another type of brake fade that we can see is something called modern brake fade. I don't think that's a coined term, but it's just something that differentiates it from this type of brake fading. And that is when the caliper gets so hot that it actually starts to boil that brake fluid, and when the brake fluid starts to boil, it actually creates little bubbles inside the brake line. And since air is actually compressible and brake fluid is not, you start to get these points in the line where there's this air bubble here, and it starts to get spongy, it starts to get squishy, and so it's causing throughout the line some sort of sponginess, and you definitely don't want that. So you don't want any of that heat, you don't want a lot of that heat being transferred to the caliper or the brake pad itself, because it will cause things like brake fade, and that is not something we want. So what is the solution? Well, the solution is to basically get a place for that gas to be able to escape, so that that full 100% contact can be made and your brakes can be used effectively. So this leads us to a couple different types of rotors. So basically what we need is a place for that gas to escape. And so what people have done is engineered some interesting different brake rotors. So on this side you can see my awesome drawings of a slotted brake rotor and a slotted and drilled brake rotor. Now, when I was first looking at different brakes that I should get, I was obviously looking at this one thinking, well, that's obviously the better pick, right? It's got holes and it's got slots in it. Well, not really. And so basically the reasons for the slots and the holes is the slotted one, actually, if you look at a slotted, I don't have any on hand, but if you look at a slotted brake rotor, the slots are cut into the brake rotor, into the material, so that when the brake pad passes over these slots will leave just enough room for that gas to escape out of the outsides of the brake rotor going out this way. So that is something that is really good and really necessary for the people who are driving aggressive with their cars or taking the track or anything like that. The other option is a slotted and drilled brake rotor. So this is basically the same thing as the slotted rotor, except it has drilled holes through the rotor itself. And this sounds great, and it is a very good thing, because not only does it allow the gas to escape the sides and the top of the rotor, it allows the gas to escape through these holes and in through the bottom of the rotor, or the inside of the rotor. And this also allows air to pass through when you're driving. It allows oxygen to pass through those holes and cool the rotor more effectively, and that's all really great stuff. Now, there is a couple issues when you're dealing with drilled brake rotors, and that is, one, you actually have less surface area with a drilled brake rotor because you're losing material within each one of these holes. You have less volume in that material available to absorb that heat. So these will actually have a little bit less of a heat absorption limit, but they will be cooled more quickly because of the holes, and then they have the benefits of outgassing more efficiently than the slotted ones. Another problem with the drilled rotors, and that is because you have drilled holes in this piece of otherwise fully intact metal, with the constant heat and cooling and the temperature changes that is constantly lowering and rising, there's a lot of stress that's being applied on this metal plate. And when you have these drilled holes, little tiny microscopic cracks will begin to form eventually over time, obviously, within these holes, which you definitely don't want cracks in your brake rotors. But this is obviously going to make the rotor itself weaker and the material weaker than, say, the slotted one. So for everyday use, and even just going to the track and going to autocross and using it for daily driving, I would highly recommend the slotted brake rotor. It is a huge step up from just the stock OEM brake rotors that you get on most cars. Okay. So now that we've talked about the problem, the solution, and the different types of rotors, let's talk about big brakes. Now, obviously, big brakes are always a better solution, a better way to go. Now, obviously, in big brakes, you can have just slotted or slotted and drilled. I drew a slotted and drilled just because it looks cooler. So again, admiring my beautiful drawing here. A couple pluses: obviously, there's going to be a lot more surface area because you have a bigger rotor itself. There's a lot more surface area for the pads to be applied to. And also, the other plus with having more volume in the rotor, more surface area, is there is more area for heat to be distributed, so the brake is going to be able to withstand more heat, which is a very good thing. Another thing is the calipers are going to be a lot bigger, which again provides more surface area and more area to be clamped down onto. And one actually very interesting that I didn't realize point or a plus about big brakes is because they have a bigger diameter than regular stock brakes, the caliper is actually set farther out. So this actually provides a very interesting advantage, I found. So let's say this is the center point of rotation for the rotor, and if you have the point of contact farther away from that center point, it is actually going to provide more leverage for the caliper to be clamping down, and easier for the rotor to be stopped with less amount of pressure being applied. So that is another huge advantage to having big brakes, and big brake life is obviously a lot better than non-big brake life. But now I want to talk about the last thing, and that is the pads themselves and the different types of pads. Now, there are pretty much 3 different types of pads that you can buy on the market. Now, some companies obviously offer a much wider variety of pads for different specific things, but we're just going to be talking about 3 main pads that most companies will provide. So the first one we're going to be talking about is street, then hybrid, and hybrid is a hybrid between street and race, or street and track, and then we have full-on race on the end here. So these are 3 different graphs. I have a little legend right here to tell you that what colors mean what. So on the top we have the initial bite, then we have how quiet the brakes are, and then we have how resistant they are to this problem up here, fading, how well they work with that, and then how much these pads will wear down. Orange is how harsh the pad is on the rotor and how quickly the pad itself will wear down. And then finally, because I didn't have another color, the X is for the amount of brake dust that the pad is producing. So the street is obviously going to have a lower initial bite because it is really only for daily driving. But keep in mind, this street upgrade is a much better contender than it'll perform much much better than your OEM. So don't think that this street one is not good, because that is the one that I'm going to be getting, and that's going to be what I'm going to be daily driving. And then for the noise, it is going to be much quieter compared to these other ones. It is going to have a lower fade resistance, so it won't work quite as well with the outgassing and fade resistance over here with the brake fade. It is going to last quite a bit longer. It has a low wear on it, and it is going to produce least amount of brake dust. So, and then we have the hybrid. So right up top we have initial bite is going to be higher than the street. Still definitely a big improvement. It is going to be a little bit louder than the street. A little bit more squeakiness when the brakes aren't up to temperatures that they should be, because all brake pads have a range of temperature that they work or perform best in. A little bit better with the fade resistance, again with the outgassing, and then they're going to have a little bit higher of a wear rate, so they're going to wear down a little bit faster and then produce also more brake dust. So overall better than the street ones, but then they're also in the middle. You get the best of both worlds. You could still daily these, but then you have like more brake dust and it's a little bit louder, and you know, so on and so forth. So which leads us finally to the race ones, and these are going to be the best performing ones obviously, but it's going to come at a cost. Now, so the initial bite is going to be much higher and much better, assuming you are up to the correct temperatures. They are going to be much louder, again having to do with the temperature of the brake, and the fade resistance is going to be much better. So the outgassing, there's the resistance, it's not going to produce nearly as much gas, and over here with the wear, it's going to have a much higher wear rate, so it will wear out faster, but again that all depends on what company you're going with. Typically the race ones will wear out faster and be harsher on your rotor, and then again brake dust will be much higher, but you're going for a race brake, you're not going to be too concerned about the noise or the brake dust. So That is why I'm going to be going with a street and also with a race. I'm going to be using a street for my daily driving. When I go to the track or autocross, I'm going to swap out for the race so I get that much better performance. I think all of this information will help you guys determine a better pad for what you're doing, what your uses are, and hopefully help you make a better purchase or a better decision, or just maybe you learned a little bit more about brakes today. So that's definitely a plus too. Thank you guys for watching. If you want to know anything else, if you have questions about the brakes or about the WRX or the Mustang or just me and Jordan in general, leave it down in the comments section. We will get back to you. If you have any other random questions like about this shirt, you can find this shirt at our website, neverfinish.com. I hope you guys are having a good day, good morning, good afternoon, good Wednesday, and we will catch you in the next one.